Hi there, I'm Vicki Scheele. As Phil mentioned, I've spent nearly 20 years now setting up, growing and running marketing teams predominantly in the tech space, most recently as CMO for a UK fintech and now running UK marketing at Marketo. I'm going to talk a bit about how, as marketers, we need to make sure that we're doing ourselves justice and making a difference in how we're measuring and demonstrating a real impact on business growth. So I'm going to be looking at four main things today, some of the measurement traps and challenges, the two main kinds of metrics that marketers need to be thinking about, how we measure marketing impact at Marketo, and also hopefully some ideas for you guys to take away to perhaps help yourselves in your own businesses. So revenue. Let's face it, it's the common goal that unites all private sector businesses. Yes, there are other priorities, but actually if a business isn't making enough money, it's not going to survive. The money in and the money out equation isn't really negotiable on that one. And our job as marketers, and everyone else's job in the entire company really, is to have a positive impact on that number, whether it be in dollars or pounds or euros or whatever currencies you're operating in. And it's important because it's what the senior exec care about, it's what the board care about, and actually it's what we all need to care about as marketing for us to be seen as relevant for those other audiences in the business. So when it comes to measuring our impact, how do we do it? How do we prove our contribution isn't just a drop in the ocean and that it is actually fundamental to business success? In honesty, we've got many ways. We've got too many ways. There are so many things that we can measure now that it's actually probably causing us more harm than good. I was recently at a CIM financial services event with a whole bunch of fairly senior digital marketing experts from the financial services world. I asked them how they measure the revenue impact of their digital marketing activities, and had fairly blank stares from the panel, who then said, well, you can't measure revenue impact of digital marketing, which scared me a little bit. Perhaps they're using the wrong tools, they're not looking at the right things, I'm not sure, but it did make me really question what they were measuring, because I'm sure they were measuring something, but if they weren't measuring the impact that they were having on the revenue of their business, then it was probably the wrong thing. And actually, lots of marketers fall into the trap of just measuring what they can, because there is so much out there these days that can be measured. And it gives us, digital channels, big data, marketing automation platforms, give us a huge amount of insight. But actually, if you're not measuring the right thing, then you're not really doing yourself any favours and you're not proving how you're having an impact on that revenue number. So some of the things that quite often get measured in marketing, Adam and Phil have mentioned vanity metrics, followers, likes, shares, look at me, aren't I popular kind of stuff, my audience is engaged. But are they really engaged? Are they really following you? Do they really care? Or have they just clicked a button? And who are the audience? Does it map to your ideal customer profile? Are they actually your targets or are they just Joe Blogs? The second one is activity metrics. So we've delivered 50 campaigns this year. We've sent 26,000 emails. Excellent. 10 bits of content, wonderful. You've been really, really busy. But what impact has that actually had on anything? Have you just been keeping yourself busy, or has it really had a tangible impact on the revenue line? So we all know that there's 1,000 things that you could do as marketers. I'm yet to meet a marketer who's got to the end of their wish list and gone, oh, I'm done. I've finished this marketing malarkey. Because there are so many things that we all could be doing. But actually, it's really critical to choose the right ones. And if you don't know the answer to what the right one is, how do you choose? And the third one is cost metrics. So we've all got budgets. We all have to measure rigorously against the budgets, report to finance on how we're doing on those budgets, how much we're spending. But it's only half the conversation. So if a business revenue is determined by money in needs to be greater than money out, if all we're doing is measuring how much the money out is without measuring how much money is coming in, then that's only half the equation. It's only half the story. but it is hard. And I put this in before I knew that Joe had won the marathon. Sorry, it's probably bringing back horrible thoughts. But, you know, especially if it's only your second marathon, it's the hottest it's ever been, you know, you've come third and you've beaten the British record, you know, even then it's hard. And the reason why it's hard is because marketing is everywhere. Our stuff is all over the place. There are so many different channels, segments, audiences. We've got different campaigns, different messages, different offers. And the fact that it actually prospects receive an average of 10 marketing touches from funnel entry until that opportunity's been closed really just shows how much marketing spaghetti there is out there that we need to try and uncover in our measurement. Of course, there are tools out there like marketing automation that actually bring lots of this stuff together, lots of the tools, lots of the channels, different audiences and different metrics. And it's amazing to have that all in one place. But actually, how do we decide just what's important? So I mentioned that I was going to talk about 2 different kinds of metrics. Before I do that, I was chairing an event last month, a business marketing club event, about the board's view of marketing and how to improve it, which is a topic that everyone probably cares about. One of the interesting insights from that was the amount of marketees we all talk without really realising it. And we happily take the mickey out of our legal colleagues for talking legalese. That's now a standard term. But I'm coining the term marketees because we all talk it, we chuck it around, and it's fine in an environment like this where everyone's a marketer. But so often we're not bringing the business with us. They don't care. They're not bothered about, all of the different tiny program measures and 3-letter acronyms that we've got for telling ourselves how well we're doing, which is terrible, really, because we're the people that are evangelising clear communications, targeting your message to the audience, but we're so guilty of failing to do that with our own internal audiences. So there are 2 different kind of metrics, really. There are marketing-focused ones and business-focused ones. So for every business, these will be slightly different, but they generally fall into one of these 2 categories. So the marketing-focused ones are more introspective, focused on ROI, the efficiency of marketing programs, individual bits of content, but they're the ones that help us get better, that help us deliver more value and become more efficient. Things like open rates, click-throughs, the stuff that we care about on a program level. But the other metrics are business-focused, and they are all about the revenue cycle and forecasting what you're going to do next. So the impact on pipeline, the impact on revenue, things like how much is marketing sourced that was mentioned earlier. What is that marketing source pipeline and how many marketing opportunities are there? And our trick is to find the right metrics. So the ones that matter and the business-focused ones need to have a business impact and actually need to be understandable outside of marketing, not just in our own environment. One of the things that I've always believed is that marketing and sales have to share a view of the pipeline. And actually, without that single approach, we're just 2 separate entities talking 2 different languages. And I'm pretty sure that by the time everyone's got to the point of being in this room, everyone hopefully shares a similar view. Because we know that actually when sales and marketing are properly aligned, then so much more can be achieved. But it isn't a given, and actually in my last 2 roles, I've been the one that's had to put in place the whole sales and marketing pipeline. It's generally been born out of frustration with very sales-centered processes, or no processes at all in some cases, and actually a lack of visibility about marketing's impact. It hasn't always been plain sailing. It makes perfect sense to me, but it hasn't always been easy to get throughout an organisation. So I've had fraught discussions with one sales director, and we ended up going right back to basics, actually going off-site, and I sat down and just explained to him my view of the world and the pipeline and how it all works. There was a really long pause, and I thought, I've blown it now. This is it. This is relationship over. And he just said, I've never heard a marketer that's looked at the world in this way. I'm like, really? Because it makes so much sense to me. What do you mean? But once we had that shared understanding, that then allowed us to go forward because he understood what I was trying to get at and what my motivations were. In another company, I've had passionate pleas with the CEO for a combined pipeline to actually measure what the sales team are doing and combine it together. And the CEO actually said to me, you're a marketer, I don't understand why you care about this. It's like, oh, okay, well, because I kind of want to know that what I'm doing has any impact at all on the revenue number. Otherwise, all I'm doing is keeping myself busy. So I was quite shocked by those two things, but actually it's taught me that it's not an isolated incident and others in the business don't always get it. So imagine my joy when I joined Marketo and came across these slides, and these are the same as I've been using for many years to explain the pipeline, just in a slightly snazzier designed format. You guys will know all of this. You got the target audience, you got your ideal customer profile, leads going through the marketing qualified stage and sales qualified stages, through to opportunities and then customers. The kind of very standard revenue cycle. Marketing tend to own the front bit, sales tend to own the bit at the end in the one-to-one space, and in the bluey purpley bit in the middle is the marketing and sales area, the bit that actually we have to work hard on to make sure that this whole process is working and we're not just chucking things over the fence. Arguably the cycle continues even further than that into customer engagement, but that's a whole other presentation. So this is a bit of a view on how we look at things in Marketo. So the channels on the left that we use are many and varied. There are more than just what's on the list here, but for simplicity, this kind of gives everyone a feel for what we use to get new names in and to engage audiences through the pipeline and to actually learn and understand more about them as they go through that pipeline. Don't worry too much about the actual values here. These are taken from a slightly different part of the business, but they indicate the number of people hopping from one stage to another. And the fundamental part of this is knowing the numbers and actually being able to answer the question, if I gave you an extra £1, an extra £10, an extra £10,000, an extra £10 million if anyone's got those budgets, what would I get back? What is the return in sales? Which is the fundamental question that anyone's going to ask if they're going to give you any more marketing budget. But if you know what activity you've done, you can map the results across the pipeline. You can have these numbers. You can see these numbers in each stage. You can start to work out what the overall effectiveness of marketing is and what the core conversion rate metrics are. So Adam spoke a little bit about those metrics for them and in different businesses. So we know that for every £1 we spend, we get around £15 back. So our MROI is fairly good, but we need to make sure that we keep it that way. And that within the sales team, for every 3 opportunities we have, at least 1 converts. We'd obviously love to get those numbers up, but that's a realistic look at the world. We also know that increasing these percentage points, even by 1% at every single point in the funnel, actually results in millions of dollars worth of extra business for us. So it's not just about pumping them in the front, it's about how efficient and effective we are at moving it along the pipeline, because every single percentage increase is more revenue for us. So the pipe to spend number lets you forecast what you're going to expect from marketing, and the revenue to pipeline number is actually the cold hard revenue impact once it's come in. So this is a very high level. The way we do this within Marketo is with our lifecycle modeler. So these are the very key top line stages of our sales process. We go from someone visiting our website, we don't know who they are, they're the little ghost anonymous person on the left-hand side. They then perform some kind of action, they download one of our fabulous bits of content, we know who they are. As they become more engaged, they read some blogs, they visit different areas of our website, they then become part of our engaged audience. So this is the point at which we're doing lead scoring and attributing every single action with a lead score. So the higher lead scores will be with things that are further down the purchase process, and someone just having a look at our blog or visiting our homepage will have a lower lead score. So that then leads through into, as that score gets higher, it triggers an MQLA. We also work on the account basis rather than the individual contact basis. Goes through to be a sales lead. There are various points at which this can flow forwards and backwards depending on whether somebody is ready, whether they're the right kind of fit. It may be that actually they get disqualified along the way if we know that they are really, really never going to be the right kind of audience for us. And then it goes straight through to the opportunity stage with the sales team, where it's either won or lost. Hopefully won, sometimes lost. And there are defined triggers between each of these stages that say, actually, this is when a prospect will move from one to the other. And we try and treat it as a seamless process because, to be quite honest, the prospect couldn't care less whether they are being dealt with by marketing or by sales or by pre-sales or by some other part of the business. We also use our Success Path Analyzer to look at how people are tracking through these stages. So just taking the bottom one of this chart as an example, this is the amount of people that were sitting in our engaged pool. So you can see, you probably can't see because it's probably too far away. So there's 162,000 people that have gone into that flow and 140-odd thousand that have gone out, which is great, but there's 20,000 still sitting there in this engaged bit, and they're not doing anything to get up to being a lead. So we know that, we know who they are, we know where they are, we can see where they're getting stuck, and we can focus our marketing efforts on the right people at the right time to try and push them further up the pipeline. So that was kind of a little bit about the revenue and the business metrics that we look at and that we use. We're going to talk a little bit about program performance, so the marketing-specific metrics that we use to look at ROI at Marketo. And we report on this monthly, weekly. We have various meetings across all levels of the organisation on this stuff. I touched a bit earlier about why measuring return is hard. The fact that there are so many touches, so many influencers that create this kind of spaghetti tangle of marketing with our prospects, which is a fabulous thing for letting our prospects do what they need to do when they need to do it. They can engage with us in the right ways, but it does make it very tricky from the marketer's perspective to put everyone in this lovely linear process. So there are lots of different ways, there's a couple of main actually different ways of looking at it. So the first one that some companies look at is single touch attribution. So it basically relies on attributing success, marketing success, to the first thing that lead touched. The first action that drove them to you. So in this example, there's a prospect who's found us on Google, they've registered for one of our predictive analytics webinars, they've attended one of our top 10 marketing reports webinar, been to a face-to-face event, and then they've converted to sales. In a single touch attribution model, the first touch, sometimes the last touch, but usually the first touch, is the one that gets attributed with the success. So in this case, despite the fact that they interacted 4 or 5 times with different parts of the marketing world, Google gets all the credit. And for us, that doesn't really work. We do get a lot of traffic in through our search, paid search, organic search. But Google wasn't solely responsible for this. What about the analytics webinar? That deserves some credit, as does the content on Facebook, as does the event that they attended. So attributing everything to the first touch is one way of doing it, but it's not the way that we look at it at Marketo. Marketo, we look at multi-touch attribution. So in this instance, there's a similar set of activities. There was a Google keyword search, a Facebook ad, post on LinkedIn, and a physical face-to-face event that led to this connection with sales and hence the opportunity. But every single marketing activity that was touched in this process gets some of the credit. It's split evenly between them all. So we say, well, actually, if this was a 100 grand deal, we're going to attribute each marketing activity was 25k, and it splits it equally across them all. Of course, not all of them are going to carry equal weight, but actually, for us, there's a point at which you can start over-measuring some of this stuff. It's like a PR agency that tells you that you need to spend £250,000 to work out what your market share of voice is when you know that it's nothing or it's really high. Sometimes the granularity of measurement that you can go to isn't required. So we stop at this level with an across-the-board equal weighting, but we look at it from a multi-touch point of view because we know that so many of our prospects have have multiple touches. And if the average is 10 and you're only ever measuring the first one, you're going to get a very skewed view on what is successful in your marketing toolbox. And it would probably tell you, just based on data, that actually everything can be attributed to Google. Quick, go and spend even more money with Google. And we all know that that's not the answer. So multi-touch is what gives us actually a really deep understanding of the activities through our pipeline and revenue. And it's not just an understanding, it's proof, because we can see what people have been touching and where they've interacted with us. But we also look at the investment to actually get the ROI piece. So we use our own analytics tools within Marketo to look at how much investment we're putting into each channel. And I say investment rather than cost, because it's not a cost, it's an investment, because we're going to get more out of it than we put in. And this shows us actually in even deeper detail what each of those pieces of that multi-touch pipeline are doing. So I'm just going to highlight a couple of examples in here. So inbound plus nurture for us makes up about 58% of our pipeline created, which is fab, because that's the one with the least investment. Inbound is great. Marketo have been doing inbound incredibly successfully for a long time. And some companies will tell you that it's all about the inbound. But actually, we can see from this that it's only part of the story. If we only did inbound, we would be 58% of the business that we are today. So we know that things like paid programs actually make up a good amount of what we're doing, and that that's going to give us the growth that we're after. But using the multi-touch ratio shows us actually how well they're doing. So for us, we say anything with a ratio of over 10 is good, and we should do more of it. Anything with a ratio under 5, we shouldn't do more of. And anything with a ratio between 5 and 10 is okay, but it depends on the goal of the activity, whether it's about awareness or lead generation, as to whether we keep doing more of that. So you can see for things like sponsored email, there's sometimes a low conversion rate, but actually it eventually gets to a ratio of 12.8, so that's pretty good for us. Trade shows not bad at 10.6, paid webinars 25.4. We love those, they're great, we're going to do more of those. One thing just to add on this data, it is a few years old for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it shows very nicely what I want to talk to you about. And secondly, that we know that it takes time for opportunities to close. There is no point measuring this stuff on the marketing activities that were done 3 months ago, because as amazing as our sales teams are, they're not going to close all of our activities in 3 months, because some of them are really big deals. So it needs to have enough time to percolate through. Some other interesting insights from looking at it on a channel and program basis. So we can see that trade shows have got an average ratio of 10, which falls into our, these are quite good, we'll do some more of this category. But actually looking at the number of those trade shows that fall above our minimum ratio, it's only 49% of them. So actually over half of them aren't bringing us the returns that we want. So we know that actually we can go and dig deeper into those, work out which of the half that aren't bringing us what they need to bring us, and which ones should we do more of, and which ones shouldn't we do more of. So rather than just looking at it as a blanket channel and saying, great, trade shows are amazing, let's just do more, we can dig down into much more detail and see actually what's working and why it's working. As a side note, you can see that at the bottom there that 56% of our channels in this example are meeting our minimum threshold of 5. Which is all right, that's pretty good, but 44% of them aren't, and that's pretty crap. So our aim is to get that number up and to get it as high as we can, so through knowing which programs are working and which programs aren't. However, I would say that should never be 100%. There will always be programs that aren't working, and if there are programs that, if you get that number to 100%, I'd argue that you're not experimenting enough and you're not doing enough differently to try out new ways of working and new things, and very shortly, if that's at 100%, you'll see other people start to overtake you. There are other ways that we can see this contribution to sales as well. So toggling between various different views and values on the goals of the program. we can see which ones have actually performed the best. So in this example, we can see that webinars are working well. This was a few years ago, but it will probably be no surprise to anyone that list purchases aren't going quite so well. But it gives us a better indicator on where to spend our budget. The other important thing that's easier to consider when it's in this kind of format is the impact versus effort balance. So I can see here that online advertising actually has a relatively good success rate, as do trade shows. Amazing. One of those things is significantly more effort than the other. Doing a trade show or doing any kind of event can suck up time and resources as well as just the investment in the cost that it takes to get there. Whereas online advertising, although it's something that you have to keep looking at and you have to keep paying attention to, it doesn't tend to suck up quite as many resources as a significantly sized trade show. So looking at that impact versus effort, it also requires the human element of working out which ones of these should be progressed and which ones maybe need to be dialed back on. So that's a bit of a kind of a whiz through. In summary, I guess there's not all marketing metrics are created equal. The marketing performance metrics will show us as marketers which investments are working, what's working best, and allows us to gauge how well they're working in line with our minimum expectations. The business metrics need to map to the funnel stages. It needs to be opportunity and revenue focused, understood by everyone, not just marketees, and it has to be business relevant, and that's what will put marketers at the table with the other C-level execs. Using marketing automation really is, if you're operating at scale with lots of different programs, it's how to pull all of those strands and all of those strings together and to give you insight into what's working, which it would just be impossible to do without. And it allows you to forecast the return on marketing spend. So when the marketers up there at board level and the finance teams are talking about the budgets for the coming year, what's coming next, the sales teams are forecasting their revenue over the next 4 rolling quarters, the marketer can be having that same conversation about the opportunities that are coming down the pipeline rather than just the activities that have happened historically. So a few things that I'd suggest perhaps for anyone that's getting started or wanting to move this on to the next level is to make sure that revenue model includes marketing and sales, to measure the impact of marketing rather than the activity or the vanity metrics, and to be able to turn that into a forecast, so something that's forward-facing. Looking at not just what's working, but what's working best and what's working better, because it will tell you where to invest your marketing budgets, rather than just saying, yep, we got a return on that one, excellent, let's do it again. If you think about the goals and the measures in advance of your programs, then you will design measurable programs that will measure the impact. When measurement is done after the programs have been put together, that's when you tend to look at, okay, what can I measure? I can measure the vanity metrics and the busyness metrics rather than actually the impact. Getting the right tools is essential, and then looking at the analytics to focus decisions that you're making about your marketing strategy on what can improve ROI. And the last one really is to just do it. Get started. It will never be perfect. Things like ROI, attribution are a journey, but actually getting started will give you some data that you can then work on and tweak and adjust and try and get those numbers up, those ratios up, and the numbers down of things that you don't want to do anymore. Thank you.